The second part of Hume's system was the idea of space or extension is nothing but the idea of visible or tangible points distributed in a certain order. We cannot see voids, so we may form no ideas of vacuum or space containing nothing visible or tangible. Hume will now address objections to this principle. The consequence of one will provide a premise for the following. Philosophers have long debated whether or not space can be empty or not, vacuum versus plenum. But before we can refute or defend the existence of a vacuum, first we must properly conceive it. Hume will first show that the idea of a vacuum is possible. He says that everything that is conceivable is possible, hence every idea that we have is possible. We know the world now to be filled, that is, to be a plenum. Also, we may conceive there not being motion. Hence, it is possible that there is no motion. Every idea that is distinguishable is also separable in the imagination, and every idea that is separable in the imagination may be conceived as existing separately. We can separately conceive neighboring particles of matter. Now, just because the window is square does not imply that everything else must be a square. We can conceive everything else separately from the window. Likewise, the existence of one particle of matter does not necessarily imply the existence of another particle of matter. Thus, we may conceive that God would destroy one particle of matter without causing the others to move, so they could remain at rest. Now consider a chamber filled with air. Hume now wonders what would happen if we removed all the air from the chamber without touching the walls or causing them to move. We will consider some theories. Some metaphysicians think that matter and extension are the same. So the annihilation of matter will also annihilate its extension. Thus, in the same act, the distance between the walls would become nothing and the walls then would touch. Hume challenges these metaphysicians to conceive of how all six sides of the chamber will touch each other without involving any motion or change of position. For how can the two walls that run from south to north touch each other, while they touch the opposite ends of two walls that run from east to west? And how can the floor and roof ever meet while they are separated by the four walls that lie in a contrary position? But if we change their position, then we must also suppose they move. Yet we said that no force acts on the walls so to cause them to move. However, if we conceive that there to be something between the walls, then we suppose that something new has been created between them. But we began by supposing that there was an annihilation and not a creation. Thus, we must consider a vacuum to exist, for otherwise we could not explain how the walls remain at rest while everything between them was deleted. Hume then says that darkness is not the same thing as a vacuum. He begins by noting that darkness is the lack of light. As a negation, darkness is not a positive idea. In the total darkness, someone with perfect vision has no more of a visual perception from shifting his eyes than a blind person would have. In fact, blind people would have no idea of what light and darkness are. Thus, if we remove visible objects from our vision, we cease having a visual impression, so we do not obtain an impression of matterless extension. Hence, the idea of utter darkness can never be the same with that of vacuum. Hume says that motion and darkness alone do not give us an idea of a vacuum or extension without matter, nor do they give us an impression when they are in between other tangible or visual objects. We form these notions only by what is given to our senses, not by what is absent from our sensation. Moving on to the section 6. We previously explained our mistaken ideas about space and time, and we have similar problems with the ideas of existence and external existence. So we will contend with them now. By doing so, we will be better prepared for the next chapter on knowledge and probability. Hume says that we possess many various impressions and ideas in our mind and memory, yet we conceive none of them as non-existent. So we never remember any idea or impression without thereby conceiving it as existing. And also we have the distinct idea of existence itself. There are two possibilities then. First, the idea of existence is a conjoined part of every perception or conceptual object. Then we derive the idea of existence from these perceptions and objects. Or, two, the idea of existence remains one with the idea of the conceptual object or perception, and we never extract an additional separate idea of existence itself. We noted before the basic principle that every idea arises from a similar impression, yet no two distinct impressions can be inseparable if truly they are distinct. So it cannot be that any impression has the idea of existence as a separable part. And thus, though every impression and idea we remember be considered as existent, the idea of existence is not derived from any particular impression. So the idea of existence cannot be separate from any idea of an existing thing. That is to say, the idea of existence then is the very same with the idea of what we conceive to be existent. To reflect on anything simply and to reflect on it as existent are nothing different from each other. We may only conceive ideas as existing. So the idea of existence does not add anything to conceptual objects.